In 2031, Earth's reliance on technology had reached unprecedented heights. Satellites filled the sky, constantly buzzing with data and communication. Weather patterns were monitored, climate changes predicted, and every corner of the globe seemed connected by the invisible threads of the internet. But on a quiet night, something extraordinary happened. It started with a low-frequency hum, barely noticeable at first, just another blip among the millions of signals constantly drifting through space. But this one came from somewhere unexpected. A small, unassuming research satellite, originally sent into orbit to monitor space weather, detected it. The scientists at the data center weren't sure at first what they had found. The signal didn't match any known patterns. It was neither natural nor artificial. It was something else. The first instinct was to dismiss it as a fluke. After all, there had been countless false alarms in the past, moments where the world's best minds thought they had discovered something new, only to realize it was a miscalculation or cosmic noise. But this was different. There was a strange, structured quality to it, an unmistakable rhythm. At first, the message was interpreted as random, sequences of numbers, patterns, and bursts of static. But as the data began to pour in, something clicked. The same sequence repeated itself at regular intervals. More importantly, the sequence wasn't just random. It had mathematical significance. Prime numbers, perfect squares, and other numerical phenomena that couldn't have been caused by natural phenomena alone. The realization came quickly. This was no accident. This was deliberate. The world's leading scientists were immediately brought into the fold. The Global Signal Initiative, GSI, was established in record time. A cooperative effort among the world's greatest minds, drawn from every nation. No one was left out. Everyone knew that the message was too important to allow national rivalries to get in the way. At the helm of the initiative was Dr. Emily Voss, a renowned astrophysicist who had spent her career studying potential signals from extraterrestrial civilizations. She was the first to publicly acknowledge what many had feared. This is the first contact humanity has received. But decoding the message was no easy task. The transmission didn't just stop at simple numbers. It contained layers upon layers of complexity, almost as if it were a puzzle designed to be unraveled over time. Linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, and even artists were pulled into the effort. Everyone hoped for the breakthrough, but no one knew when it would come. As the months wore on, the sense of urgency grew. Governments poured money into the project, funding the best technology, while people around the world watched closely, wondering if the signal might hold the key to the greatest mystery humanity had ever faced. The repetition of the signal was constant. Every 18 hours, the transmission would start anew, never deviating, always the same. But despite its predictability, it still made no sense. Some believed it was a call for help, others, a beacon for trade. But as the years passed and progress was slow, doubt crept in. Maybe they were simply chasing a dream. Then, in the third year of the decoding process, something strange happened. The signal changed. Subtle at first, a shift in frequency, a change in tone. It was no longer the same pattern. The world held its breath as they realized. The message was evolving. The initial excitement had faded into frustration. What had seemed like a groundbreaking discovery, one that promised to change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe, quickly turned into a maddening puzzle. As the years passed, the excitement around the signal dimmed. Progress on decoding the message had been agonizingly slow. For 12 long years, humanity's best minds worked in unison, struggling to untangle the layers of complexity that had been hidden in the transmission. By 2035, the world had already seen its first wave of doubt. Governments began to wonder whether the resources spent on the Global Signal Initiative, GSI, were truly worth it. Was the signal really from another civilization, or was it just a cosmic oddity? One of those once-in-a-lifetime phenomena that would, in time, be explained away by science. The pressure to find answers intensified, but each day brought new frustrations, Nothing seemed to match. The more the scientists delved into the signal, the more it seemed to defy their understanding. As the years wore on, the project's morale began to waver. The signal still repeated, every 18 hours, as unchanging and predictable as ever. But it was a hollow comfort. After all, it was still just a pattern, and there was no clear meaning behind it. Scientists pored over mathematical algorithms, tried to break it down through linguistics, and even used artificial intelligence to assist with the analysis. But nothing clicked. Every theory had its flaws. Every breakthrough ultimately proved to be a dead end. By 2039, the GSI had become a symbol of humanity's collective struggle against the unknown. People no longer watched in hopeful anticipation. Instead, they grew weary of the long silence. Scientists continued to pore over the data, but there was no satisfaction in the small victories, no sense of accomplishment. Some began to question whether the signal was even meant for Earth at all. Maybe it had been a mistake, some form of cosmic coincidence. Others held on to hope, thinking that the breakthrough was just around the corner. It was during this time of uncertainty that the unexpected happened. Dr. Emily Voss, the leader of the GSI, was in a small laboratory reviewing the latest findings. Tired and disheartened, she was about to give up for the day when an anomaly caught her eye. It was so subtle, she almost missed it. A faint, harmonic tone hidden beneath the endless repetition of numbers. It was music. The breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. A blind cryptographer named Nadia Caldwell, who had been working with the team as a data analyst, noticed the change in the pattern. She had been listening to the transmission, not with her eyes, but with her ears, letting the rhythmic pulse of the signal guide her. Over the course of the past year, she had become convinced that the signal was more than just a mathematical code. It was a symphony, a musical language. Nadia's insight sparked a new wave of interest. She theorized that the signal's true meaning lay not in the numbers, but in the intervals between them, each one corresponding to a musical note. As the team began to apply this theory, something remarkable happened. The message, once unintelligible, began to take shape. It wasn't just about decoding numbers or patterns. It was about understanding the rhythm of the message itself. For the first time in a decade, hope surged through the GSI. The discovery didn't just change the course of the decoding efforts. It changed the way humanity viewed the message. No longer was it a cold, distant transmission from the stars. It was something alive, something meant to be felt and understood, as much as it was meant to be read. The challenge had evolved. Now, the world had to understand the meaning behind the music. What message was it trying to convey? Was it a song of peace, a warning, or something else entirely? The pieces were finally falling into place. But would they ever be able to fully comprehend what was coming? After Nadia Caldwell's breakthrough, the tone of the Global Signal Initiative, GSI, shifted. What had been a tense, frustrating effort to decode a cryptic signal now became an exhilarating race against time. With the recognition that the signal contained more than just numbers and patterns, it was music, a harmonic symphony. The team focused their efforts on translating the notes and rhythms into a coherent message. For months, they worked tirelessly, analyzing the variations in tone, pitch, and frequency. The signal was like a complex piece of music, where each note seemed to have a specific purpose and meaning. But the most astonishing part wasn't just the mathematical complexity. It was the way the transmission had begun to reveal a visual component. A holographic image, projected from the sound waves themselves, emerged when the right frequencies were amplified. What appeared on the screen took everyone's breath away. A humanoid figure, tall and ethereal, with glowing lines running through its body, as though it were formed from light and geometry. The being had an otherworldly grace, its features almost too perfect, too symmetrical to be human. It was as if the figure had been sculpted from the very essence of the cosmos itself. The figure stood still for a moment, and then began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it raised its hand and pointed toward a star system in the distance. As it did, the image on the screen shifted, and the system flickered, first showing vibrant planets, teeming with life, then slowly dimming, until the planets were black, empty orbs floating in a silent void. The figure moved its hand again, pointing to another system. This time, the planets remained dark, even before the figure's gesture had finished. The message was chillingly clear. The figure wasn't showing them distant worlds for the sake of mapping stars. It was showing them worlds that had been destroyed. With each planet, the figure's gestures seemed to communicate one unspoken truth: civilizations that reached a certain technological threshold, one that involved extensive electromagnetic emissions, were doomed to fall. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Earth was on the same path. The figure's gaze turned toward Earth itself, and for the first time in the long years of decoding the signal, the world held its collective breath. The image of Earth appeared on the screen, its vibrant blue oceans and green continents shining against the black backdrop of space. But the moment the figure's eyes locked with Earth's image, something shifted. The Earth on the screen began to flicker, just like the dead planets before it. A soft, pulsing light surrounded it, almost as if the world was being observed, judged. Then the figure spoke. It wasn't through words, but through the same harmonic tones that had guided the decoding process. The message was clear, though it wasn't articulated in language. There was no need. The figure's gestures, the music, and the images combined into one undeniable truth. Earth was on the brink. The civilizations that had gone before them had been wiped out by something that hunted those who broadcast their presence too loudly, too recklessly. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving behind an unsettling silence. But the warning had been delivered. Earth had been seen. The question now was whether humanity would heed the message, or whether it was already too late. The transmission ended, and the room filled with an eerie silence. For a few moments, no one spoke. The holographic image of the humanoid figure that had appeared in the signal flickered and faded, leaving the entire GSI team staring at the empty screen. The implications of what they had just witnessed were impossible to ignore. Earth was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the figure, an alien entity from a distant corner of the universe, had shown them a terrifying truth. The message was clear, but its meaning was overwhelming. The signal wasn't just a friendly communication. It was a warning, one of great urgency. The message had shown that technologically advanced civilizations that emitted too much electromagnetic radiation, signals, broadcasts, and even simple communications were doomed to be destroyed. The figure had demonstrated this through images of desolate planets, their once thriving ecosystems wiped out. The destruction wasn't a natural phenomenon, but the result of some cosmic force hunting these advanced civilizations. The question that plagued the team was, why? Why would such a force exist? What was the purpose of this silent, invisible predator in the dark reaches of space? Was it a force of nature or something more sinister? And why was Earth being singled out? For months, the team struggled to find an answer. Their understanding of the signal deepened, but the motivations behind it remained elusive. Dr. Emily Voss, the leader of the Global Signal Initiative, GSI, found herself consumed by questions. The figure had shown them the result: empty, lifeless planets, once home to thriving civilizations. But it hadn't explained why these civilizations were targeted. What could have caused such a thing? Why would any advanced civilization be destroyed for simply broadcasting their existence? The team's uncertainty was matched by the growing unease of the world at large. The initial shock had given way to panic. Governments scrambled to address the threat, while scientific communities tried to find a way to shield Earth from the same fate. There was no consensus on how to respond to the warning. Some pushed for complete silence, halting all transmissions, cutting off communication with satellites, and minimizing the electromagnetic signals sent into space. Others argued that this would be impossible, or worse, futile. The damage had already been done. Earth had already broadcast its presence to the cosmos, and even if they stopped now, the unknown entity that hunted civilizations might already know about them. By 2043, Earth's governments had reluctantly agreed on a response, a collective effort to reduce humanity's electromagnetic footprint. New laws were passed to limit the use of powerful broadcast signals, and all space exploration efforts were put under tight control. It was a desperate attempt to avoid the fate of those dead worlds shown in the signal. But even as humanity scrambled to implement these measures, one undeniable fact remained. The signal had come too late. The message had taken 12 years to decode, and the alien figure had made one thing clear. The cosmic predator was already aware of Earth's presence. Even if humanity succeeded in hiding its signals, would it be enough? Was there still time? As Earth's leaders and scientists worked in secrecy, a growing sense of dread settled over the planet. The long months of decoding had brought them to this point, and the warning, though crystal clear, had left far more questions than answers. The message had delivered its chilling truth, but humanity still couldn't comprehend the full weight of what was to come. The world was fracturing. What had once been a united front in decoding the signal now gave way to deep divides. As the truth of the warning settled in, humanity found itself at an impasse. The Global Signal Initiative, GSI, had done its job, uncovering the terrifying message and providing undeniable proof that Earth's technological advancements had drawn the attention of something far beyond their understanding. But now, the real battle began. What to do with this knowledge? How could Earth respond to a threat that seemed both invisible and omnipotent? Nations scrambled to take control of their fate. While scientists argued over the best course of action, governments began issuing mandates that ranged from extreme caution to aggressive countermeasures. Some countries, particularly those that had invested heavily in space exploration and satellite communication, advocated for complete silence. They argued that Earth's best chance for survival was to stop all broadcasts, cut ties with outer space communications, and disappear into the cosmic shadows. This would involve a drastic reduction in global communication networks, the cessation of space missions, and the sealing of all high-powered electromagnetic emissions. They believed that any signal, even a faint one, could betray humanity's location to whatever hunted these advanced civilizations. But not everyone agreed. There were those who argued that complete silence wasn't just an overreaction. It was impossible. Modern society, with its sprawling technological networks, was built on electromagnetic signals. Everything from GPS to communication satellites to weather monitoring depended on emissions that broadcast humanity's presence into space. And while some feared this would make Earth a target, others saw it as a sign of strength. These optimists argued that hiding from the universe was not the answer. Humanity should face the challenge head-on. They advocated for the creation of new, more secure methods of communication, hidden in quantum encryption, making it nearly impossible to detect by whatever cosmic predator had wiped out the other civilizations. This split in philosophy created chaos. The world was in crisis, and rather than uniting in the face of disaster, humanity was turning on itself. Leaders from rival nations criticized each other's responses, blaming the other's advances in space exploration for drawing the predator's attention. It seemed as though humanity was doomed to tear itself apart before the unseen enemy even arrived. Despite the division, there was one unifying factor: the realization that Earth had no choice but to act. No one could afford to stand still, hoping the threat would simply vanish. A series of emergency global meetings was held, bringing together the world's most powerful leaders, military strategists, and scientific minds. The aim was clear. Humanity had to work together, set aside its differences, and find a way to safeguard the future of the planet. In one of these meetings, Dr. Emily Voss, who had led the charge in decoding the message, took the floor. Her voice, once filled with optimism and wonder, now carried the weight of responsibility. She acknowledged the fear and the uncertainty that gripped the world, but she also reminded them of the potential that lay in their unity. "We've always looked to the stars for inspiration, for answers," she said. "Now we must come together, not just as nations, but as a species. Our future depends on what we do next." A new alliance began to form, not just in words but in action. The major powers began to collaborate on a global strategy, a combination of reducing electromagnetic emissions, researching advanced stealth technologies, and securing communication methods that were undetectable to the unknown enemy. The task seemed impossible, but for the first time in a decade, the fractured world began to share a common goal. As the years passed, the urgency of the situation spurred innovation. New technologies emerged, some offering a glimmer of hope. But even as the world took steps to protect itself, the question remained, would it be enough? The predator in the cosmos, now known as the Hunter, was still out there, and its gaze, unseen yet ever-present, watched humanity's every move. As the years passed, Earth's attempts to shield itself from the unknown threat were met with increasing difficulty. The technological barriers to reducing the planet's electromagnetic footprint were significant. Nations that had once relied on the advancement of communication technologies now found themselves in a race against time. In an age where every human interaction seemed to rely on digital connection, the call for global silence seemed almost impossible. Yet, despite the challenges, humanity's collective effort to cut back on high-powered electromagnetic emissions continued. Dr. Emily Voss and her team had been working alongside governments, military experts, and the world's leading scientists to create communication systems that were both secure and virtually undetectable. Quantum encryption technology emerged as a potential solution. These advanced systems offered the hope of communicating across vast distances without broadcasting signals that could be intercepted by the cosmic predator, now commonly referred to as the Hunter. Yet there was still one major issue. How could they be certain it would work? The Hunter had not revealed its full nature, and no one knew for sure how advanced its technology truly was. In a secluded research facility, deep in the mountains of Switzerland, Dr. Voss stared at a screen. The new encryption methods had worked in theoretical tests, but the stakes now were far greater. This was no longer a simple experiment. The entire planet depended on the success of these efforts. If they failed, the results could be catastrophic. Have we tested the signal in real-world conditions yet? Dr. Voss asked, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. We've done everything possible, one of her lead researchers responded. But there's no way to truly know if we're safe. The Hunter, it could be more advanced than we think. It could have a way of detecting our encryption that we don't even understand. The truth hung heavy in the air. Despite their best efforts, no one could be sure that the encryption would be enough to protect Earth from detection. Every successful test of the new technology only raised more questions. How had the Hunter known to target the other civilizations? Was it possible it was already aware of Earth's existence? Dr. Voss and the other members of the GSI could only speculate. There were no answers, only fears and doubts. But as the world continued to search for answers, something strange happened. A subtle shift occurred in the signal. For the first time in years, the transmission that had once been so predictable, so consistent, began to change again. The music, the rhythmic pulses that had once seemed so cold and calculated, began to shift in tone. The notes, though still hauntingly beautiful, became dissonant, almost as if the figure was attempting to communicate something far more urgent. The harmonic undertones deepened, carrying a sense of foreboding. The team quickly analyzed the new data. The figure that had once appeared on the screen, the being that had delivered its ominous warning, was back. This time, however, the transmission wasn't a static image. The figure's gestures were more frantic. It reached out, seemingly pointing directly at Earth, its hand trembling. It no longer showed desolate worlds, but instead appeared to be frantically searching for something, as if in distress. "It's happening," Dr. Voss whispered under her breath. The signal shifted once more. Instead of showing destroyed worlds, it now began to depict what could only be described as the Hunter itself. The shape was too abstract to make out entirely, but there were unmistakable hints. Vast, swirling clouds of energy that pulsed with an unnatural power, as though it were alive, watching, waiting. The figure in the transmission looked toward the swirling clouds in fear before the transmission abruptly ended. The silence that followed was deafening. Earth was no longer just the object of the hunter's observation. It was now the object of its pursuit. The unsettling transmission left a cold chill in the air. The moment Dr. Emily Voss and her team witnessed the final image, the swirling clouds of energy, hinting at the hunter's presence, panic began to spread across Earth. There was no denying it anymore. The cosmic predator wasn't just an observer. It was hunting. And Earth was its next target. For the first time since the transmission began, the world's leaders, scientists, and military strategists were forced to confront the undeniable truth. The hunter, a force that had obliterated countless civilizations before, was aware of Earth. Its silence had given way to an unmistakable sign. The pursuit had begun. As nations scrambled to respond, there was no longer a question of whether humanity could survive. The question now was how. The message had shown them only fragments of what the hunter was capable of, but those fragments were terrifying enough. No one knew if the hunter was watching Earth in real time, or if it had already arrived, silently circling the planet, waiting for the right moment to strike. The pressure was immense. Every nation understood that the only way forward was to act as one, united in purpose, if not in method. Global alliances that had once been bitter rivals now came together with a single focus: to survive. In war rooms and classified facilities across the world, discussions turned from theoretical to urgent. What could they do to protect themselves? And if the hunter was already aware of Earth, what defense could they possibly muster? Dr. Voss, while working alongside other leading experts, began to wonder whether their technological efforts would be enough. The encryption, the cloaking devices, the stealth communication systems, they had all seemed promising in theory, but the reality of the situation was far more daunting. The hunter was an entity unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. How could they defend against something that had existed long before Earth had even begun to broadcast its presence into space? In the midst of this uncertainty, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The blind cryptographer, Nadia Caldwell. For the past few years, she had been focused not on decoding the signal, but on the patterns within it, the rhythmic patterns that now seemed to serve as both a warning and a map. Nadia had spent countless hours working with the sound, deciphering its frequencies, harmonies, and intervals. And now she had noticed something extraordinary. "There's a pattern," Nadia said one evening, her voice calm despite the weight of her discovery. "It's a cycle, a rhythm in the hunter's actions. It's not just random destruction. It's following a sequence." Her revelation was met with disbelief at first. How could something so unpredictable and destructive follow a pattern? But as she explained further, the pieces began to fall into place. The hunter's destruction of other civilizations had been part of a repeating cycle. It didn't just obliterate civilizations indiscriminately. It waited, watched, and then struck at the most vulnerable points. Nadia theorized that the hunter wasn't interested in immediate annihilation. It wanted to see how civilizations would react when their survival was at stake. "The hunter studies," she concluded. "It observes and learns from each civilization, and it's been watching us for a long time. That's why we received the warning when we did. It's testing us." This theory sent ripples through the scientific community. It changed everything. The panic began to give way to a cautious optimism. If the hunter was learning, then perhaps humanity could outsmart it. The hunter wasn't omnipotent. It had a method, a rhythm, a predictable behavior. But even with this new understanding, Earth remained in grave danger. The clock was ticking. The planet could no longer afford to waste time on division. Every second that passed brought them closer to the inevitable confrontation. Now, humanity's challenge was clear. They had to find a way to use the hunter's behavior against it. They had to understand its rhythm and exploit its weaknesses. But the question remained, did Earth have enough time to learn its enemy's moves before the final strike came? With the discovery of the hunter's pattern, humanity found itself at a crossroads. The revelations from Nadia Caldwell provided a flicker of hope in the darkest of times. If the hunter operated on a cycle, a predictable rhythm, then perhaps Earth could turn the tables. It wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a battle of wits. Could humanity outsmart the cosmic predator before it struck? The next few months saw a surge of innovation. World governments, once fractured by fear and uncertainty, now worked together in a way never seen before. Military forces collaborated with scientists, engineers, and cryptographers in a unified push to understand the hunter's cycle and, more importantly, how to disrupt it. The breakthrough provided a brief window of opportunity, but the clock was ticking. Every day brought Earth closer to its first direct confrontation with the unknown entity that had already wiped out countless other civilizations. Dr. Emily Voss, once a beacon of hope for a peaceful resolution, now found herself leading one of the most critical operations in human history. The theory that the hunter had a rhythm to its attacks made sense, but there was still no way to be sure how the next phase of the cycle would unfold. Would it strike with devastating force, or would it continue to observe, waiting for humanity's next move? One thing was certain. The time for caution had passed. Humanity could no longer hide in silence. They needed to act, and they needed to act fast. With the support of the Global Signal Initiative, GSI, a worldwide offensive was launched. The first step was to broadcast a signal, a calculated, encrypted message sent directly into the heart of the hunter's domain. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a challenge. The message, designed to be both a test and a provocation, contained no words, no symbols. Instead, it was a mirror, an exact replica of the harmonic frequencies that had originally formed the signal. Earth's message was simple. We see you. We understand you. The hope was that by mimicking the hunter's own language, humanity could establish a form of communication, an exchange of intelligence that might lead to a deeper understanding of its nature. But there was another, riskier element to this plan. The broadcast wasn't just a message, it was a beacon. A beacon designed to lure the hunter into a confrontation. The final broadcast was launched from a secret location, far from the populated areas of the world, to minimize the risk of immediate harm. The team held their collective breath as the signal transmitted across the cosmos, trembling with the knowledge that their fate hung in the balance. Moments later, a response came. It wasn't a signal of destruction. It wasn't an immediate attack. Instead, it was a single harmonic tone, a low, vibrating frequency that reverberated through the very core of Earth's communication networks. The tone was familiar, almost like an echo of the signal that had first arrived. The figure from the original transmission appeared on the screen, its gestures now more precise, more purposeful. It was as if the hunter was acknowledging Earth's presence, not with violence, but with recognition. The figure raised its hand and pointed toward Earth, its eyes seeming to shimmer with an expression that humans could only interpret as curiosity. Humanity had just made contact. The transmission lasted only moments, but in that brief interaction, everything changed. The hunter was no longer an unknowable force in the distance. It was here, on the verge of interaction. And Earth had just crossed the line between observer and participant in a game far bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. As the screen faded to black, Dr. Voss stood, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment. The countdown had begun, not just to survival, but to an understanding of the universe itself. Would the hunter offer a true challenge, or would it decide that Earth was another failed experiment to be wiped from existence? Time would tell, and humanity's future now hung in the balance.